All right. What's up, folks? How are we doing here this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be? If you're catching this on the replay, then it's great to have you here on the replay as well. But once again today, we're going to be doing a little bit of live code with Dino and Fresh, working on some iterative features for an example application we've been working on kind of on and off over the last month or so. So if you haven't joined us for one of these sessions before, it is very informal. We're actually it's going to be essentially like I'm going to be pair programming with the chat. We're going to be working on some features for a Fresh application and kind of working together collaboratively to make those things happen. So if you remember from last time, we have been working on this example application, which is the concept is it's like a preschool, like a nature preschool, much like the one that my own kiddos went to when they were very small. And it's sort of a combination like marketing site and administrative application for this fictional school for Dinos, of course, Dinos being the adorable dinosaur mascot of the Dino runtime. And the concept is there's this public side of the site, there's like a blog and sort of a marketing site, but there's also an authenticated section of the site that we're going to build out with like some management features where sort of general users can log in and do certain things, like they can sign their little Dinos up for classes, or they can manage their user accounts, things like that. And staff members will be able to do different things, like they can create classes, sort of see like an administrative view of the application instead. So just a pretty basic, like data-driven application that most of us have probably worked on a bajillion times before. And what I used as a starting point was the SaaSkit application template, which if you go to dino.com, you'll be able to find it there. But essentially, it just gives you kind of a starting point with a Fresh application that already has like user authentication built in and a few other features that are useful. There's like a Stripe integration that will eventually get around to including in this application too. But the thing that I was hoping we could do today is dig into like some of the role-based access control stuff that I've been wanting to add to this application. So I mentioned before, there's going to be this concept of like administrative or staff members that can log in and do certain things. And also there'll be just sort of a general authenticated role where we'll kind of assume that, those users are authenticated, but sort of unprivileged users within the application. So I wanted to at least like get the bare bones of that working today. And I've done a little bit of homework, so I won't be totally derping around, but we are going to be kind of building this together in real time. So let's go ahead and dig in. And hi to Norway as well. I was actually just in Norway a couple months ago. Dino is a fully globally distributed company. So we have team members all over the world, but like 3 times a year, we all get together in just some location in the world. And Norway was the location last time. It was in Færøsbad, which was very nice, very charming little town. So thanks for joining us from Norway. All right, well, let's go ahead and dig in. So this is the application, and we have already set it up. Oh, I don't have the server running. That is a problem. So let's do that. So we'll fire up the Fresh server, and here we go. So I actually already had user authentication set up, and it's working pretty well. And this was mostly set up for me by the SaaSkit template, although not entirely. I actually swapped out like the GitHub oAuth provider with a new custom oAuth provider in Auth0. And this is really kind of, we're now getting to the point where why I actually wanted Auth0 as the authentication provider. Because they actually have like role-based access control, like APIs built into their platform, so that like in the UI or via API, I can assign roles to users based on their different desired levels of access in the system. So we've already implemented authentication in our application. So we have like within Auth0, we have this like list of applications, and this is like the development instance of our app that has some stuff that is fine to publish, like this domain and client ID, and then we have like a client secret and stuff like that. But what we're getting into for the first time here is this concept of like users and roles. So I have 2 users in the system, one of which I'm going to assume is kind of like an untrusted user, which just has a Gmail address, and the other has like my Dino email address associated with it. And this one I actually want to be the administrative user. And just messing around a little bit, I already created a role. And this part is actually pretty easy. All it is this is basically everything that happens. You give it a name, you give it a description, and then after you do, you can also assign individual permissions to it. So this will essentially becomes a way for you to, through a GUI, configure the different, levels of access control, different permissions that you would have for different roles in the system. And then there is like a administrative API that you can use server side to assign these roles to different users. So there's lots of different ways you can do that, but I actually manually in the UI like added this user to this role, which you can do, which is pretty easy. You just go up to add users and you search for the user that you want to add. So if you had like a smaller application that didn't have too many different users that needed different roles, doing it within the Auth0 GUI is probably fine as a solution for that. But generally speaking, I'm sure you'd want to use the management API, which we'll use here in a little bit, to actually assign users to roles. So we do have some of this set up, and I actually also have found like within the documentation, like how to figure out like what roles are assigned to users. So so Auth0 has this concept of like a management API. And there's a get user roles endpoint, which I found some documentation on. And this is the thing that we want. So we want to be able to, when a user logs into our application, see what kind of roles they have assigned to them, so we can determine how we should treat them differently in the system. So this is kind of the level of investigation I've done already. So we can see, I have a little bit of logging set up in the application that kind of spits out like the user profile for the currently logged in user. If I go into my code here, let me make this a little bigger. I also set up StreamYard today to stream in 1080p. So hopefully it's a little clearer to folks on the line, because I know that has been a pain point in years past, in sessions past. But this is our Dino Nature School application, which is available on my GitHub. I can pop the link in the in the description on the recording, but it's just github.com/kwinnery, and it's one of my pinned repositories, so you'll be able to see it there. But it's a fresh application and has a bunch of routes and islands and other things sort of already configured in it. But if you've seen a fresh application before, the general folder structure should be familiar. But here in this file, callbacks.ts, this is one of the routes, route handlers set up in the application. And this route handler handles sort of the OAuth dance, where so after we exchange a token, exchange our like client ID and client secret for like a token for the currently logged in user. There's a little bit of logic that gets executed here, which grabs like the current user profile for the logged in user. So there's this line of code here that actually uses the Auth0 API to get a user info object, and this profile data that we're logging out to the console here, that's the result of this response. And if we look at that response, the thing that is kind of useful here is this sub, which is sort of the unique identifier for a user within Auth0. Also, just looking over the chat, what's up, Sweden and Slovakia? Thanks to you both for hanging out. but yeah, so there's this unique identifier for the user, and this is how we're going to like make a second API request to get the roles that are associated with this user. Unfortunately, I did look at this API endpoint, and I at least couldn't find a way to automatically include the roles for this user within that. It could be that it's just, I'm sure there's very good reasons for it, but it would be nice to get that information back with user info, but I think we will actually have to make a second API call here to get the roles associated with the user. So this is the point at which I think we're going to want to do that in our code. So at this point, we've authenticated via OAuth0. We've got the user data with the ID that we need, and now we need to like get the actual data about the roles associated with this user, and probably store that like within our session, what sort of passes for our session object. So we're actually using well, maybe not session, but like we actually have like a user model that we're storing in Dino KV, which is the yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks for the love for the poster in the background. Revenge of the Jedi, before they changed the name to Return of the Jedi, when George Lucas determined that a Jedi would never take revenge. So, but yeah, here we're. This is probably the point where we're going to want to make that second API call to get that get that information back. So now is when we're going to do that, because I actually have not gone through to implement that yet in this application. So for starters, so here we actually have this this situation over here where it looks like this is the API endpoint that I want to hit to get that information. But I was pretty certain actually that I needed like a specific endpoint for my application, but it looks like not. It looks like I just have this login.auth0.com, and then I have like a URL parameter here where I need to pass in the ID of the user. So let's just kind of do the stupid thing first and just kind of paste this in and see where we get to. We have this Auth0 URL that we're pulling in from the system environment, and that actually is specific to the application. So like in here, there's this, here it's okay. I'm not going to be using this in production, so I'm okay leaving that up there. But in the .env, this is actually associated with like the instance of my application. So this actually does have to be dynamic, and probably like in production, I would use like a different version of this URL and then different versions of this data. But it looks like for this other endpoint, it's actually just the same every time. So yeah, we'll just do management API or something like that. And we'll pop in that URL. And maybe here, we'll keep the endpoint here, and then we'll kind of substitute in some of those other URL parameters when we make our fetch API request here in a sec. Cool. So we've got that. And then after we get our profile data, let's go ahead and make a second fetch request. So we'll say const roles response equals await fetch. And then we're actually going to need to construct like a new URL for this API endpoint. And actually just recently learned you can actually use the URL like constructor to append another string to like a base URL. So so like here we could do a template string and have it be, what was it? It was like like users ID roles, right? So we can go like users, and then we can, template in, I think it's like, profile data dot sub, like that was the name of that unique identifier. And then like roles is sort of the, the last part of that. And then we can actually pass in as the second parameter to this URL constructor, the base URL, which actually ends up being kind of handy. So we're going to do that. And I think that was like what? I think we called it like management API. Cool. And then here we actually will need to pass in like like a different authorization token, because this authorization token is for like the logged in user, but we're doing like a machine to machine API request where we're going to be using like a different token to authenticate this request. The logic is going to be about the same. Like we still got to set up like a bearer token or HTTP bearer authentication, which we're just going to pass in a token like this. But instead of this access token that's like scoped to the user to access their data, we need to use like our application's like elevated access to get at this data. So management API token, we'll call that. That doesn't exist yet, but we'll go ahead and pull that in. So I think like once we kind of get that going, we'll be able to, see this, see this coming in. So underneath here, and this we're just kind of hacking right now. I don't imagine like we'll probably want to refactor this a little bit. We wouldn't maybe want to hard code this API URL, stuff like that. But let's create that API token here, and that's also going to be an environment variable that we'll store. Except for I am cheating a little bit here in that this token for the management API, you're actually not supposed to just like generate one and keep it forever. There's this whole like, dance for, getting management API credentials. Here, where was the documentation for that? The management API. So like what Auth0 wants you to do for this machine-to-machine authentication is actually go through like a very similar flow where you exchange like a client ID and a client secret for a management token. And then you kind of, refresh those tokens over time. So it's not like a Stripe API or a Twilio API token where you kind of generate a token and it's just kind of there for, kind of indefinitely. This one, they sort of set up their API such that you need to generate these tokens dynamically. So I don't know if we're going to have time to do all that today, because we actually want to see if we can make this role-based like user interface side work. So what I did is I temporarily generated one of these management API tokens. And in the docs here, there's this link to say you can generate a token manually. And so I did. So I generated one that like lasts for about a week or so. So we can have one for testing. But like in production, you would want to like set up a whole, song and dance to, check the validity of this token and refresh it and get a new one if necessary. So you wouldn't actually, configure this token in the system environment and kind of forget about it like you might with other API credentials. So, but again, as I said, for testing purposes, I did set that up. So here there's a, I had actually exported a environment variable for this. So I think it was it was like Auth0, management API key. So this I actually just kind of have chilling in my system environment. So I should be able to use that. Eventually, I'm going to want to set up that token refresh cycle that I just told you about. But for now, I can just pull this in from the system environment, and that should be good, at least for sort of prototyping this and figuring out what's possible. Quite comment in the chat that there's a Dino KV version of this app. KV right now is like the only database that I'm using for this application. And it's possible I won't even need anything else. Like a key value database is surprisingly useful. Like you probably wouldn't want to use it like in any scenario where you need like advanced querying. But failing that, like if you're just doing like CRUD operations, it's actually reasonably flexible. Like you just set up your keys in almost like a RESTful API hierarchy. And that can sort of get you a long ways there, like for, reasonably complex persistence. So we'll see. We might pull in a different database for this application and besides Dino KV, but we might not need to, which would be pretty sweet. Okay, so we have this management API token, and we're going to pass it in here. And if all this works, what's going to happen first is like we'll just kind of log this out to the console to see, oh wait, this actually won't be JSON. I forget that you need to do that. Const roll data equals await. Excuse me, roles response.json. Got to keep it asynchronous. So there we go. Let's see if that works. So if that does the thing, what I would expect to happen is to be able to come out here. I'm going to sign out. I'm going to sign in again. And after I sign in, I would expect to see in the console, oh, it's a bad authentication header format. Interesting. So probably that means like my token is not, doing the thing that I assumed it was supposed to be doing. So let me just double check that and see how that's going. So authorization, I mean, this is kind of how I would expect that to go. We could just kind of confirm that this token is, what we expect it to be. So that is getting pulled in from the system environment, I would imagine. So we'll sign out, sign in. Okay. So that actually, it was undefined. So this actually is not being pulled in here. So Auth0 management API key is not defined in the system environment, which is weird. Maybe I need to kick my server. I was pretty sure I started my server after defining that. So like echo, I think it was like Auth0 management API key, and it's this giant nasty thing, which is what we want. So yeah, I mean, I figure that should be fine, right? Like count, sign out, sign in, but it's still undefined. Weird. That's what I called it, right? Auth0 management API key. It's definitely what it was. Oh, that's not it. Auth0, that's not even, that was not it either. Yeah, management API key. Definitely there. I wonder if this is like something with the .env needs to have it defined or some nonsense, which would be dumb because I don't think that's how .env, like if deno env needs that to be defined, like in a .env file. I mean, that would be surprising to me, but let's go ahead and add it anyway. And yeah, and we can sort of do that. So we can say, oops, no, let's not do it here. And then I think we can go like what? PB copy to like send it to my clipboard. And then, nope, that's not it. Is it pipe to PB copy? Yeah, that was the one. Okay, so cool. Like we'll set it in our .env file. That's kind of dumb though. I feel like that shouldn't be necessary. If this actually fixes it, I'm going to be like modestly upset about it because that's actually pretty unintuitive behavior if that actually is how that works. So let's go ahead and go here and we're going to sign out. We're going to sign in. And yeah, cool. So like it's logging out the big nasty string, which is fine. But that's dumb. I don't think you should have to, it should be able to read stuff in from the system environment, even if it's not defined in this file. Like that seems a little silly to me. So anywho, we are pulling that in. So we have the management API token. Now let's see if the role data is flowing in as we would expect. So let's pop out here. We'll sign out. We'll sign in. Bad audience. What the what? The hell does that mean? So interesting. I feel like I was able to curl this API successfully earlier. But that is kind of weird. I mean, we could Google that error. So Auth0 401 bad audience. Yeah, that's my problem. So yeah, so we're doing this thing. Whatever. Cool. Audience is in the OAuth token request needs to be the management API identifier. On your dashboard, if you go to API, audience is mentioned next to the name. What? Audience needs to be the API identifier, not the Auth0 domain. What's this? Shows the audience for the management API. You complete the link as the API audience is shown, not just the domain. Weird. Okay. I'm still not exactly sure like what this means, because let me try to recreate what I did earlier. So like what I did before is I actually used this example, and this actually worked for me reasonably well. So like I guess that didn't have, like I used this big nasty URL instead, versus the other one. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe the audience, finger quotes, is embedded within this URL, which I believe is the identifier for my application. So I could actually generate that dynamically from the system environment like I am for the other URL. So why don't I do that? I'm going to try that instead and kind of see where that gets me. I should probably have a chance to like learn more about how Auth0 actually works, but let's try this first. We'll try the easy thing, the copy pasta first, before actually understanding, what all is going on here. So this auth URL, I used this before, like in my other fetch request, and then like theoretically, it looks like I can do that again. So instead of this management API, I'm going to use the auth URL and see if that does the trick, using like the specific URL like for my application. All right, so it restarted. Let's go back out here, go to our account. We're going to sign out. We're going to sign in. Token N. N is not what? Not found is not valid JSON. Well, heck. Let's see. Well, just as like a sanity check, I am going to try this again, this curl command. I'm going to switch this to double quotes because I do want to like pull in that token from the system environment, which should be the same thing. It's not called this though. It was called what? Auth0 management API key. Cool. The double quotes should sort of allow Bash to expand that. path validation error. Interesting. Oh, I didn't put in the user ID. That's a problem. Okay, so that is the path parameter that I need to pop in there for the user. And maybe I can just like go into my console here real quick and grab this guy. And this was the sub value from that API response we got before. So like this should be what we want, but let's go ahead and paste it in there. And yeah, so this is what I was looking at before. So I made that curl request. It's not super attractive. Do I have oh, I don't have the JSON formatter on my terminal yet. This is a relatively new computer, so I don't have all my tools set up as yet, but there's like this JSON pretty printer that I like to use. But this totally works, right? So like we're submitting this request and here's a JSON array, which has like the role staff member, which should be coming back. So this seems pretty legit. Like this URL is what we want. Let's maybe double check that our URL is indeed what we think it is. So let's like extract this out to a variable. And we'll go, what does it say? API URL, and then I'd like to log that as well. Also pretty sure Dino has like a debugger that I could set up and use instead. I just haven't like figured out how that works yet. So rather than these ugly log statements, like if I was a real developer and had my ID set up, I could probably use breakpoints for this instead. But also console log is fine if that is your preferred way of debugging. That is also just fine. Okay, so let's see what's happening anyway, just to make sure that URL is being created in the way we would expect. Okay, so we still have the server error, but we should probably be able to see the log message up above it because the error is like Auth0 session entry not found, Auth 2.0. Okay. All right, I think this error up here is probably like our middleware is complaining, like it's trying to, I remember there's this record visit middleware that runs on every request. And I think that uses like the logged in user. So like our cookies and or session state might be a little bit goofy. But we can deal with that here in a second. So URL, oh, okay, this is the log statement I was looking for. So this is correct, right? Like this should be fine. This has the href that we want, but the valid JSON, like, so maybe that's the issue. Let's console log roles response and see what all is happening here. Maybe like it's like I'm getting some other kind of error. Here, let's restart the server. All right, so I'm going to my account. Sure, it's all happening. Okay, so it's 404ing, which is curious because you and I both saw that we just did a curl request to that same URL and got like the JSON back that we would expect. So this is wild. Is this the same as what's in our .env? Like let's check that real quick. Like For excuse me, no, that's not the .env. There it is. Yeah, this J2S 8v4 whatever. Yeah, so this is the same URL. And I bet like if we just like popped this URL into our curl command, like I bet that would actually work too, which would really bake my noodle. Let's see. Oops. Let's. All right, so we're going to take the href from our code that we console logged out. We're just going to straight up paste it in and execute the same. Okay, so we do get a 404. Like what is different about this than the other curl command we tried to execute? So this one does give us a 404. Did we mess up like the user ID? Is the user ID different? Dev J2 whatever US Auth0 com users. Oh wait. We didn't have API v2 in there. Oh man, stupid Kevin. Yep. Okay. I see chat already figured it out. The API v2 is missing. Good job. So let's go ahead and set that up. So what we need, which we didn't do before, is where is our thing here? Cool. So like we don't need that, but what we do need is down here. Like it's like auth URL, or we could include it here too, like /API/v2 users auth URL, whatever. That will probably do the trick. And then we can, I bet then we can get the JSON back. I feel confident this is going to work now. Roles data equals wait roles response dot JSON bloop, and then let's just make sure that's the stuff we want. Awesome. Let's head out here. We're going to sign out. We're going to sign in. Great. And then let's look at the logging. Super. There it is. So we've got our role stuff coming out here. Cool. So I think like we have at least like the data we need now to kind of set up our user object to be sort of role aware. So this is the data we get back. This is probably like the role we would want to check for. And then, if this is the case, then we would, give a user potentially like special, special access in the application. So I think like the best way to do this is, so we have like in the application, there's this user object, right? So if we scroll down here a little bit, let's take out some of our console logs because we don't need these things anymore. We can keep the API URL external. That's probably nicer than, having it in there. I guess who cares? It would be slightly shorter if we just did this because we're not using it anywhere else. So we'll clean that up a little bit. We don't have our, console logs anymore, which is fine. But later on, what's happening is we, get this user profile data from Dino KV. So like that's what this get user function is. It's passing us back to like a strongly typed object, like from our Dino KV instance, and the ID is that like user ID that we were talking about before. So when we create the user. Oh, great. And then we are updating the user as well. So basically what's happening is we're creating like this TypeScript. I think it's an interface. Yeah. So we have this like is subscribed. We have like a Stripe customer ID. This ID, pretty sure is the sub. like from the oAuth response that we get from Auth0. I'm pretty sure that's how I set it up. But probably what we can do is we can just add a second Boolean here, and then like just say like is staff or something. It can be optional. Like we don't absolutely need to have that like on the user. So we'll say it can be optional. But let's like check the role when they log in, and then we'll just flip this flag if this happens to be true for that particular user. So we'll check the role, and then if they have the specific kind of role, then we'll set that up in that way. So the thing that's going to be a little tricky here, though, is we have like existing users in the system. So like my user that's already there won't have a like this, this thing set up. So we would need to, ensure that that happens like with this update user. So update user would need to ensure that like if there was a thing, or if there was like a role associated with the user and there wasn't one there previously, that we would still associate it with the user. Specifically, we want to get the role ID, which would be like roles data. What was it? Oh, it's already gone. But I think it was just ID. And this would be like a unique string identifier for the particular role that was set up in Auth0. So if it has this role, but no, this was an array too. So we would need to check the length of the array. Yeah, just for science, I wonder what that API response would be for a user that doesn't have any roles. So like, let's go back here and let's go to this one. This user has not been assigned any roles. So I wonder if that JSON array is then just like empty, or what's going on. Yeah, so let's replace the user ID. Yeah, okay. So it's just an empty array if there aren't any roles associated with a user, which makes perfect sense. Okay, so this roles data is an array, and if it, in our case, like it will never be like right now, like, and for the foreseeable future, this application is going to have one role. Like we might have to get smarter about this eventually, but for now, we're just going to have the one role. So we can say like if roles data, sub 0, we can just grab the ID of that. Wait, no, it's not dot sub 0. There we go. Okay, sweet. So we've got this like string ID for the role. And we could probably like set up like an environment variable for it. But here we can staff role ID. Can kind of hard code this. Actually, we would definitely want this in an environment variable. So let's do that. Staff role ID equals, and then we'll get that. I think we can get that from the console here. So let's go here, blanc, and there it is. Okay, so we'll just do that. Pop that in here. We'll come here and say, staff role ID, and then what did we say that was? It's that. Great. Cool. And then we can like do some Boolean logic to say like, all right, do they have this do they have this, staff role ID? And if so, let's, set up their user with that. So we have like the role ID that we got from the response, which we can do Boolean logic on. So if we're creating a new user, this is reasonably straightforward because we just need to include that in the user data. So we can say, I think like in the user object, what did we do? We just said we have an isStaff Boolean. We can set that equal to, oh wait, if this is empty, this isn't going to work. So can be an empty string, so it can be falsy. Most data dot length is greater than 0, and is this doing what I think it does? I'm just trying to do like a little like alternate expression. Can I do an assignment here? Is that not a thing that works? I was pretty sure that was a thing that works, but we can do a formal if statement if we feel it is necessary. But I was pretty sure that was a thing. I probably just had the syntax wrong. All right, but that works just fine. So we'll do that. And we can check then down here if it's truthy or falsy. But this is going to be a Boolean. So let's just make this like, let's just make this isStaff will be a Boolean that we just set up here. So let's just do that. So it's going to be const isStaff. And here we can probably just make this like a Boolean statement. We can just say like, if it's greater than 0, and if this dot ID equals the staff role ID that we had above, then we know that we have like a staff member. So we can actually just do isStaff because we set that up there. Expected. Oh yeah, we need a comma there. Sweet. So like this will be set to true if the user has any roles at all, and if the first role they have is the staff role ID. In theory, that will let us, set up a staff role for that person. So that seems fine. So for creating a new user, that should do just fine. But what we do need to do is like update a user. Well, we could do here, like I think this just like wholesale updates the user. So let's just go like user dot isStaff and just like assign that to isStaff. Oh, because we can't do that in assignment. So yeah, so like, so if that's defined, like let's just do that. We'll do like if user. Well, here we're actually already doing that. So let's do that because we're saying like if not user blah, and then down here we could just say update user. So we know that the user is defined. So we can say user isStaff is equal to isStaff. So we'll just update this little Boolean flag every time the user logs in. And then we don't have to change this update logic. We'll be able to kind of keep this localized in here, and that should work fine. Okay, so theoretically, what we got going on now is oh, nice. They took away I have like my IDE set up to auto format. So it took away some unnecessary parentheses there. Cool. So we got the role data coming in, and it should be updating like our Dino KV user object with all of that jazz. So let's log in and log out a couple times and just kind of ensure that that's happening. So we're going to sign in. If we go to an account page, subscription free. Yeah, an easy way to do that would probably be just to like update this route and show whether or not it's a staff member. So let's go to the account thing. And I think it's this one. I think it's index.tsx. Yeah. So this is like our account page. Here's like the whatever. It's like a row, I guess. That must be one of these. Username, subscription. Sure. Okay. So we got like a little component that updates these things. Whoops. So let's do another one of these. Like pop another row here. Wait, what did I do? I feel like I goofed this up. Oh no, wait, I should have done this is the one that I want. Username, subscription. And like for this one, I'd want to like conditionally show this. So I think we're going to go with the old like props dot data dot user dot is staff. And then for that's when we would like render a row like with some stuff in it. And then else we would actually not render anything. And then like, what if we just staff member, we just do a row. This probably won't be like the nicest UI, but let's see if it at least works. So yeah, it just says like staff member, which seems fine. Does this row let us like customize it at all or no? Props. Yeah, it doesn't like let us pass in a class or anything. Oh, it does have children though. So I don't know. It might be nice to extend these props to like, let us like apply a class to this whole thing. So we'll do like row class. It's optional and it's a string. And basically we'll just like append that to this, like if necessary. So I think there's also like there's like a utility that does this as well. But what we could do here is just be like blank, and then we could turn this into a template string and then pop in the row class. Oops. Oh, it's props.row class. So basically the reason I'm doing this, server components on the Fresh Preact roadmap. We are looking at that. So yeah, a question from the chat is like, are there server components on the Fresh Preact roadmap, or at least islands that are persisted on navigation? And we are looking at different ways to go about doing that. So Fresh, again, like as mentioned, uses Preact, which today doesn't have server components like in the same way like that a React application could in more recent iterations. We are looking at like a few different techniques for doing that. Like we know we definitely want to include like more of a client-side navigation option, because in fresh applications right now, there is like a page turn when you navigate to most links. So we're looking at ways to make that a little smoother, possibly using like the view transitions API in the browser. But yeah, I will say like it's something that we're thinking about. I don't think Marvin or the team has scoped out any like work around it specifically, but it is something that we want to do, and then we have like done like a little bit of R&D around it. So it's something that could appear in the future in Fresh for sure. All right, so we added this like row class property, and I'm just going to kind of take advantage of that to just pop a new like tailwind class on there. So I'll say like row class equals text, or I think is it text bold or is it just bold? I forget. Bold, and then maybe like text red 500. I don't know, something like that. It should just like pop a tailwind class onto the end of that row. Yeah, it looks like it's working. I don't know if I think it was already bold, so that might not have done anything. What if it's like italic? Yeah, okay. So this is doing the thing. And then this user is a staff member, and it's kind of marked as such like on their account page here. Cool. So if we sign out, we sign in again, and then we go to the account page. Cool, there's that. And then if we come over here, this account is signed in with my other email. But if we sign in again and go to the account page, oh, username is shown twice. Did I like goof that up? That doesn't seem right. Oh, I did. Like, I think I accidentally, I think this is a copy pasta error on my part. So, is this really how we want to format that? That seems so weird. Okay, so we have like the staff member, subscription free, cool. And then over here, we have username, subscription free, because there's no Stripe integration set up yet. Okay, so anywho, I mean, I feel like we did some work today. Like we got this done. We set up like a role-based access system such that like, based on roles that we set up in Auth0, we're able to, have a different authenticated experience based on the user object that we're updating like through Deno KV. So yeah, I think we're doing some work. I'm going to go ahead and while we're actually here, like, oh, you know what? I did the wrong thing before, and I actually created a file called pbcopy instead of piping to the pbcopy command. So my Unix system administration skills on display for all to see. But I think this is what we did. So yeah, so like in our, we added the UI to the index page for the account. And then in our callback, we, added, some work around this like staff management API token and whatnot. And then we added a little bit of logic here to grab the staff key, and then added that to both the new user and update. And then the database, pretty easy. We just like added an is staff Boolean there to kind of track the data about the user. So yeah, I think we're doing okay. So let's go ahead and we will commit that. All right, so we'll push that up. So if folks wanted to check out the repository, they certainly can. It's this URL here. It's github.com/kwinery/Deno Nature School. I'll actually pop this in the YouTube chat, like just in case folks would find that interesting. Feel free to check it out. I'll also maybe just pop it up on the screen real quick to make it a little bigger. But this is where you can find all the code that we just worked on from today. But I don't know, I feel pretty proud of us. I think like the big thing we need to do next time is implement like the token shuffly flow on the Auth0 side, rather than using like a hard coded API credential like in the system environment. That sounds like that's a necessary step for like a production implementation of Auth0 here. So we'll probably take a look at doing that either next time, or I could do it offline before we stream again. But yeah, once again, high five to everybody in the chat. Thanks for the help and the pointers here today. It was always useful having smarter people than me looking over my shoulder at the code that I'm writing. So much appreciated. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. I'm kind of digging into some Dino code, and check the Discord events. That's where we post the links and the times for these live stream sessions. You can also find them on YouTube Live as well. We'll schedule them usually a couple weeks in advance. I try to do it like at least a couple times a month. Hopefully, as time allows, maybe I'll start doing them a little more frequently. But yeah, once again, hope that was useful, and looking forward to hanging out with everybody next time. Have a great weekend.